Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and hello if you're new here. Thank you so much for joining. So today's task is to go through with you guys every single 5-star read I have ever had. Well, actually no, I say ever had, but I mean since I started tracking my reads. So I've actually only started tracking my reads on Goodreads. I think I started at the beginning of last year. So I haven't been tracking my reads for that long at all because I have been reading, I would say I've been reading many books a month for the last like three and a half years, but then I've always read books. So prior to the last like 3.5 years, I would say I would still read like 2 to 3 books a month. But obviously in recent years, like I've been reading way more than ever, but I wasn't tracking my reads back then. There are going to be books I read years ago that I definitely would have probably rated 5 stars, but I didn't have a rating system at the time. That sort of came in when I joined BookTok and became a part of that community and came up with a rating system for my books. So that's when I started tracking them on Goodreads. So since I've been tracking my reads, I have read 217 books and 39 of them have been 5-star reads. 17.9% of them have been 5 stars, which isn't really a lot, and it does take a lot for me to rate a book 5 stars. So I think I should explain a little bit as to what 5 stars is to me, because I actually think it's quite different for everyone. Like people have a slightly different view of what they would rate a book 5 stars. So for me, 5 stars is like a feeling that I get once I finished a book. So not only have I enjoyed every single page from beginning to end, have I forgotten the fact that I was even reading, I was just completely lost in this world, that I'm obsessed with these characters. I think it's like a feeling that I get where I finish the book and I just know that there is going to be no moving on from these characters. They're going to stick with me forever. The story's going to stick with me forever. It's like a very specific feeling that I get when I'm reading, and that is when I will rate a book 5 stars. So I've rated a lot of books like 4.75 stars, which to me was just like literally perfection. Like I loved the book, couldn't fault it, but I kind of know that I'm probably not going to be thinking about these characters or these books after the fact. And it has happened with a few books, like The Serpent of the Wings of Night. Absolutely loved that, but that book was amazing, but I haven't actually really thought about Rain and Araya, those characters, since I finished it last year. Or what other books have I had that with? Some books in the Darkverse series, that's one of my favourite dark romance series ever, or like the Hollow Boys series, a favourite series ever, but there's certain books within those series that gave me a feeling that the other books didn't, and that's why they get 5 stars. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through them in no particular order, because I don't know if you can see my shelves are completely in disarray because I was getting all of the 5-star books out and my shelves over there. I'm not going to talk too long about what the stories are about because we will literally be here for 2 hours, and as much as I think people prefer longer YouTube videos, and I do think this is going to be a long video probably, editing myself back is such an interesting experience. Like I am infuriating when I speak. Like I edit myself back and I just think, oh my god, Poppy, shut up. So the longer this video is, the more I'm gonna have to listen to myself talk. It's just a nightmare. Like I cut myself up, I go off on tangents, I start saying one thing and then halfway through I'm saying something else. I'm just a nightmare. Like my ADHD comes through massively. I notice it so much when I'm editing myself back. So I'm gonna try and keep my descriptions of the books short and concise. I do think a lot of them are gonna be very well known as well, but I'm already talking too much. So let's get into all of my 5-star reads. Pen Pal by JT Geisinger. This is a dark romance, paranormal elements to it, very spicy. The plot twist you would not believe. I read this book in one sitting. I literally couldn't put it down and it absolutely blew me away. Not only is the writing so good, is the spice really good, but the actual story, I never knew where it was going. And then when the plot twisted, I literally I nearly threw my book at the wall. I was like, I never saw it. It was just so good. And if you haven't read this yet, I highly recommend it. I think JT Geisinger is quickly becoming one of my favourite authors because I've got another one of her books in my pile, which I've just recently gave 5 stars as well. 2 books in the ACOTAR series. I think it kind of goes without saying that some of those would be in here. So A Court of Mist and Fury and A Court of Silver Flames. I love these books for completely different reasons. So for me, with A Court of Mist and Fury, I didn't really love the first book, A Court of Thorns and Roses. I think I gave it like 3.75 stars. I wasn't in love with it. This book was where I really fell in love with the characters, with the world, where the overarching story was starting to really come together for me, and I just kind of completely forgot that I was reading, and the development of the plot and everything in this book, I just couldn't fault it at all. And I knew that this was the book that made me realise that this series in general was going going to stick with me. I need to do an ACOTAR reread because I read it 2 years ago now and I still think about it all the time. Now, A Court of Silver Flames I love for different reasons. I think it is one of the most incredible books I've read in terms of someone's character and redemption arc for Nesta. I think how much you like this book depends on how much you like Nesta's character. If you don't like Nesta, you're not going to enjoy this book. I liked her. I see a lot of myself in her and I really connected with her in so many ways. So when it came to this book, I think this book is really beautiful in terms of like all of the lessons there is in like believing yourself when nobody else will, doing things for you, like being strong, picking yourself back up and keeping on going, dealing with trauma, like all the lessons and stories in this book I just thought were incredible. I really, really resonated with it and I think it's just amazing. And on top of that, I think that this is the best written book in the series. This and A Court of Winds of Ruin, I just think the writing is absolutely incredible and this book is just insane. It's just amazing. Okay, so 2 books in the Darkverse series. So The Reaper, which is the second book. Oh my god. I mean, I was in love with Tristan Morana after The Predator anyway, but I just felt like the actual story itself I wasn't really connecting with, just like the characters. The plot in this just absolutely just takes off and I couldn't put the book down. I thought the character development, the depth between the two of them, the past, the present, the flashbacks, the twists, like the way that the story developed in this book was just phenomenal and I was in love with it. And then funnily enough, the third book in the series, which is The Emperor, was also my other 5-star read from the series. This is Dante and Amara's story and I knew that I was going to love them because we'd already met them in the first 2 books, but this blew me away in terms of storytelling. I just think that the levels and layers to their relationship, I was just completely obsessed. Also the overarching plot in this just thickens so much and it's just one of the best plots ever in a dark romance. Like, I think people don't talk enough about how good the actual plot, aside from the romance, is in the Darkverse series. It is absolutely insane. Next up is the third book in the Zodiac Academy series. This is where I got up to and where I have currently stopped. I think I'm going to finish it in December. Don't know why, something about December just screams fantasy to me and it just feels like the perfect time to read this. But this was the book where I ended up falling in love with the characters and really get a sense of where the series is going to go in terms of like potential found family and the plot, and it's got every trope in it that you'd love. I think the magic system is amazing, the world is amazing, I love the elemental magic, I love the zodiac signs are a part of this, I love that we've got like teacher-student, enemies to lovers, forbidden love, like every single trope that you would love is in here, rivals to lovers. It's so good. It is literally like Hogwarts but in Solaria. Basically, it's literally just like a magical Hogwarts with elements and everything. It's just so good, and honestly, if you're a fan of Harry Potter, like, you need to read this. It's basically like a darker version of Hogwarts, and I could not put the book down. Then I had to stop myself because I need to get through my physical TBR, but I think about these characters every day already, and I'm only 3 books in, and I've got 6 books to go, so I have a feeling this series is going to completely destroy me. Okay, next, because I am basic and I don't care, but Fourth Wing. I know that this book is not without its problems, but as I said to you, I rate books 5 stars because of the feeling that they give me, and the way I stayed up till 4 o'clock in the morning to finish this book because I couldn't put it down. I was completely obsessed with Xaden. The tension, the story itself, the dragons, the world, like, I loved it. I know a lot of people say they think the world building isn't that great, but I had a really vivid image of exactly where I was. I completely forgot that I was reading. I lost time whilst I was reading this book, and like I say, I had to stay up till 4 o'clock in the morning to finish it. I just had the best time ever. Cannot explain how much fun I had with this book, and I think about it all the time. And I also think books that keep you up in the middle of the night because you don't want to go to bed, don't want to put them down, it says a lot. Staying on the theme of fantasy, Powerless by Lauren Roberts. This is actually, in case you're wondering, this is the Waterstones edition. I just recently got it and it's in my favourite colour, so we're going to use it for the video. But Powerless by Lauren Roberts, again, another book that I had so much fun with. I didn't want to read it because I didn't think I liked YA fantasy. Clearly I was wrong because I had so much fun. This is very Hunger Games coded, but I think that's why I loved it, because I loved reading the Hunger Games. I love the Hunger Games films, and I know it's very similar, but aside from that, I did really like the world. I thought it was very intriguing. It was a little bit different. I love reading about trials, and I love the rivals to enemies to lovers to enemies. Like, It was just so fun. Again, this actually, I think I remember with this book as well. I think it got to like 2 o'clock in the morning and I had work the next day and I was like, Poppy, you have got to put this book down. And I couldn't. I just literally couldn't put it down. I still think about Kai and Payton to this day, and I read it nearly a year ago. Okay, so the next book, this is one of the best stalker serial unaliver dark romances I've ever read. This is part of a duet, but I didn't rate the second book 5 stars. I rated it 4.5. But There Are No Saints by Sophie Lark. I swear to God, this is so criminally underrated. I feel like the people who know, but there's too many people that don't, and you need to read this if you like dark romance, and also if you are getting into dark romance, because it's not too dark, it's not too far, but oh my God, Cole Blackwell, this was so good. Again, with this, it was playing out in my mind vividly like a movie whilst I was reading this book, and it's a really interesting story. It's about like 2 artists, so it's like set in the big city, but it feels very dark still, like it's very like dark New York City underground vibes, and it's about 2 artists, Cole Blackwell and then his rival. And they are both serial unalivers and they know each other's secret, but nobody else does. And then obviously Cole meets Mara, who becomes his weakness, and obviously he's trying to protect her from his rival. And anyway, it's just, the story is insane. It's fast paced, it's spicy, it's fun, it's very, very spicy. And also I have to say, she actually has a playlist in here, and before like a scene starts, she writes the song. Let me try and see if I can find like here, she literally writes what song you should listen to it whilst the scene is playing. Please do it, because it elevated my reading experience like no other. This is completely unforgettable. I remember this book chapter for chapter, scene for scene. I'm not even joking, and I think it's because I was listening to the playlist as well for particular scenes, so my memory with it is spot on. I just can't get over it. It's just so good, and I really, really want to reread it soon. So next is Blood Orange by Karina Howe. This is a dark vampire romance, but it's so much more than that. So it basically, essentially the lesson in it is about love transcending time. So not only is it super dark, super spicy, set in Venice, which is the most amazing setting for a dark vampire romance. Like the imagery and the scenery that I was picturing was just absolute perfection. Basically in the book, they met like hundreds of years ago, and then they find each other again down the line. And it's also got this magical guild in it, which is sort of like nobody in Venice knows that this is going on. It's like a teacher-student forbidden love romance. It's just so good. It's one of the spiciest books I've ever read, but it's one of the best vampire romances I've ever read, because I feel like they can very easily become a bit cheesy. This, absolutely not. It is, again, part of a duet. I didn't rate the second book 5 stars. I think I gave it like 4 stars or 3.75 stars. It was a little bit disappointing compared to this one, but if you are a dark romance reader, this is the perfect time of year to pick this book up. It is so good, and again, like I remember scenes in this book clear as day, and I read it over a year ago. Okay, so next is 3 books from the Hollow Boys series. So The Blood We Crave Part 1 and Part 2, which is these 2 books, and then The Truths We Burn, which is the second book. So this is Rook and Sage's story, and this is Thatcher and Lyra's story, and the series as a whole I absolutely loved, but this was giving me the Devil's Night series vibes, and I think that's why I loved it so much. I completely loved the depth. We get flashbacks between past and present. Like, these characters, they don't just meet and then we follow their relationship to them essentially falling in love. Like, they've got so many layers to them. They've known each other in the past. It's like second chance romances. Thatcher and Lyra's story, like, it is so intricate and detailed. Everything they've been through since they were kids. It even stretches as far as like their parents. Like, I just loved the depth and everything, and I think when you get that much depth to the characters in the story, like, there's just no way you can forget about them. And I think about, like, Rook Van Doren is one of my favourite MMCs of all, well, I'm so such a person, to be fair, like, they're my favourite MMCs now of all time. I'm just obsessed with them, and I also liked the FMCs too, because sometimes I can find them a little bit annoying, but these stories will stick with me all the time. Like, I think about Rook and Sage all the time. Like, it's, and Thatcher and Lyra, honestly, I'm just obsessed. Okay, I feel like this is such an OG, but the Ravenhood trilogy, the first 2 books, Flock and Exodus, I have never been able to move past these books, ever. If you're not familiar with it, which is like, where have you been if you've been hiding under a rock? It is basically modern day Robin Hood retelling. So obviously Robin Hood is like taking from the rich to give to the poor. So in the Ravenhood trilogy, it's the same idea, but it's more political, and it's like about this secret. So it's set in a small town, and it's giving motorcycle club vibes, even though it's not. Like, they work in garages and they do up cars, and like Dominic drives like a really old Camaro, and they go on these drives in it, and they sit on the bonnet of it under like the starlight, and it's so good. I just love the setting of it, like Triple Falls. It's very like, it was reminding me, I don't know if it is set in Canada, but it was just reminding me of, like, you know, when you just picture Canada with the lakes and the trees and the huge and beautiful forests and like the winding roads that go through it. Like, that's what I was picturing, and then you have like a small town set in there. I will never ever ever be able to move past these books. Both of them are, I mean, they're not just 5-star reads, they're like 6-star reads. I think I still probably should attend therapy after Exodus, and I have not been able to pick up One Last Rainy Day because I just don't know if I can go. I've had the book for like a year, and I just don't know if I'm ever going to be able to read it, because I don't know if I can put myself through that heartbreak. But this is one of the best series I have ever read. I am completely Team Sean and Dom all day long, and I'll never ever be able to get over it. It truly is amazing, and the writing is phenomenal. It is so beautiful. Like, Kate Stewart's prose in this is beautiful. It brings out like so many emotions in you. Like, you just fall completely in love with these characters. You are completely sucked into this world, and I've just never been able to forget about these books ever. So next up, let's just talk about my Penelope Douglas books I've rated 5 stars. So Credence, obviously this is a very controversial book, but for me, Credence isn't a 5-star read just because of like how taboo and how spicy it was. It's actually because I think this is, first of all, I think it's one of Penelope's best written books, and second of all, I think the character development and their character arcs, everything in between all 4 of them in this book is completely unmatched. And the pacing of it, the way she tells it, the setting of Credence, honestly, I'll never get past it. I remember as well reading it in September as the seasons were changing, and I went on a dog walk up in this forest whilst I was reading. I started Credence that morning, took my dog to this forest, which was literally like pine trees and everything, and I just literally remember getting home and being so in the zone for the setting of Credence that I think it just became completely unforgettable. It is very taboo, you know, it does make you question your morals, but honestly, I've never been able to get over it. There are scenes in this ingrained in my mind. The truck scene, the couch scene, the barn scene, like, I can see them as clear as day, and I read this book so long ago now, like 2 years ago. I'm due a reread. That's all I'm hearing there. I'm due a reread. Obviously, it's no secret that the Devil's Night series is one of my favourite series ever. So Corrupt, 5 stars for me all day long. You cannot name me a book with better tension and angst than Michael Christ and Rika Fane. Like, honestly, it's just so good. And I think also because it's the beginning of Devil's Night and we get to see everything that happened. Like, we've got so many questions, there's so much tension, there's so much angst. Like, it is a bully romance, but I feel like you just cannot help but turn the pages. I actually stayed up again till, I think I did an all-nighter reading Corrupt, actually. Was it Corrupt or was it Nightfall? I'm pretty sure it was Corrupt. I did an all-nighter reading it. I literally couldn't put it down. And also it was one of my first series that I read that was on the darker side. And I think that's why I love it so much as well, because it sort of opened my eyes to darker romance, and I never went back. And then after that, Nightfall as well, 5 stars all day long. I think this is, in terms of the writing and everything, this is a lot better than Corrupt. I think that Penelope's writing like really comes into its own through the series. But this book, I mean, first of all, it is such a chunky beast of a wrap-up, essentially. I think the Devil's Night series, the actual plot itself is just really epic. So much goes on, there's so many twists, so many turns, so much past, so much present, so much future. Like, it's just amazing. And this book is where like all of the characters like really come into their own. We finally get all the last pieces of the puzzle. I love the setting as well. Like, is it Black Church? Yeah, Black Church. I thought it was Blackthorn. Why was I thinking Blackthorn? Black Church, like, that they go to. Like, that storyline in itself was amazing. The things we learned about the characters in Nightfall as well, like all of the final missing pieces of the puzzle slot into place when you read this, and there's just no better feeling. Considering this book is 700 plus pages, I read it in 2 days. I could not put it down. Next is a more recent 5-star read that I've had, which is Perfect Strangers by J.T. Geisinger. Again, I think the reason I gave this 5 stars was because I thought the plot was amazing. I think the final plot twist almost knocked the 5-star rating on the head for me because I don't know if I liked it. But what I can't deny is that I read this in one sitting, I couldn't put it down. The spice is insane. Like, I wasn't expecting it to be that spicy. I almost was like cringing at how detailed it was and some of the things they were saying to each other, but I had so much fun with it. And there's like 3 twists in it. I didn't see any of them coming. I was just completely blown away, and I thought the pacing was perfect. Like, I have been thinking about it all the time. Sometimes with more recent 5-star reads, I can end up changing my mind. I don't think I will with this, but I did do it with Praise by Sarah Kate. I gave it 5 stars and then I've changed my rating to 4.75 because I haven't actually really thought about them since I read it, but I can't deny that I loved the book from beginning to end and had a lot of fun with it, but I don't actually think about the characters after the fact like I do with these books that I'm talking about. So Lilac by B.B. Reid, this was my first Why Choose Romance, and knowing that I loved the rockstar romance genre and Why Choose, this is the first book that sort of like intertwined the two, and I gave it 4.75 to begin with, and then I changed my rating because I could not forget about any of the characters. Lauren James, I'm still in love with him to this day, and it's been over a year, it's been like a year and a half, I'm still in love with him. I thought this was so fun. I loved the forced proximity in this. Obviously with it being a rockstar romance, they're basically touring and she becomes their guitarist, and then 2 of the guys can't stand her and then the other 2 tolerate her. And obviously you've got the typical dynamics in a Why Choose, the cheeky one, the grumpy one, the one that's a bit quiet. But just in general, like, I loved Braxton's character. She was feisty, she was interesting, and it's just, it wasn't even that spicy, and I think that's why I liked it more, because there was a lot of focus on developing like the individual relationships between her and the guys, but individually instead of as a group. And it's just so good. If you like rockstar romance, you need to read this. Even if Why Choose isn't really your thing, I think you'll be able to get on with this, because honestly, like, this is one of the best Why Choose romances I've ever read. But the forced proximity in this is like no other. Like, they're literally stuck touring together for 7 months on a tour bus. It doesn't get better than that. Fabric of Our Souls by Kate M. Moranova. I read this earlier this year, and I mean, if a book makes me cry, I feel like to get that much emotion out of me whilst I'm reading it deserves 5 stars. This was amazing. It is definitely on the heavier and darker side of the stories. It's set in a psychiatric hospital, and it is about people who essentially don't want to be here anymore, finding a reason to want to live through each other. But then it's also devastating and heartbreaking, but then it's also like beautifully heartwarming. Kate Moranova's writing is incredible. I've read 3 books by her this year and I've rated them all 5 stars, so that says a lot. But this is also a different story to anything that I've read. I haven't read anything like this. I just thought it was just beautiful, and it will stay with me for a really, really long time. Next is the Crossfire series by Sylvia Day. I feel like this is such an OG. This is the best billionaire, big city, New York City romance I have ever read still to this day. It's one of my favourite tropes, but every time I've read them since, they just fall flat because they're not Gideon Cross, they're not Ava Trammell, and they're not the Crossfire series. This is just insane. It was also one of the first spicy books I read, aside from 50 Shades of Grey, and it's so much better than 50 Shades of Grey. And I've reread this 3 times. I've read the entire series 3 times since I first read it back in, like, I think I first read it back in 2014, but this came out in 2012, so it's so old, but it's just amazing. If you need a really good billionaire workplace romance, this is the best one I think I have ever read. And if I find something better, then I don't even know what to say, because it just, in my head, it doesn't get better than this with billionaire romance. Okay, so Neon Gods by Katie Robert. This introduced me to the world of the Greek mythology retellings like Hades, Persephone, and this does it the best that I have read. Neon Gods is so good. It is really spicy, but there's just so much more to it than that. It's kind of like a dark fantasy, but it's not fantasy with fae or dragons or anything. It's basically like set in this world that they have like a barrier around them, and they are separated from the rest of the world, and there's just like magical elements to it, so almost like magical realism. You can't cross from the upper city to the lower city, so Hades like runs the lower city and then Zeus runs the upper city. The Zeus is like a title, not actually a person. It's very political and kind of a bit complex to get into. I love the series as a whole. I won't go into it too much now, but Neon Gods is the best one out of the whole series. It's the first one, it's the best one that I've read so far. I've read 5 of them now, and I just think that the series in itself is amazing. But this book, even this one, like there's scenes that just still vivid in my mind. It was one of the, again, when I discovered like darker romances, this was one of the books that I read back then. So I think that it's always going to have like, I was going to say a special place in my heart. That is ridiculous to say about dark romance, but I just mean as in, I just can't forget this book because it really opened my eyes to a lot. And can I just say, there's a spicy scene in here that is 14 pages long. 14 pages long. So the Monsters and Muses series by Sarah Miller, one of my favourite dark romance series ever, but I did only give one book out of the series 5 stars, which is Oaths and Omissions. This is, again, that series actually is like Greek mythology retelling. So I can't remember what retelling this is exactly. Here we go. So it's inspired by Helen of Troy and the Trojan War myths, and it's so good. It's fake dating, underground mafia world, small town. It's just, the series in general is amazing. But Jonas Wolfe and Lenny Primrose are two of my favourite characters ever. Lenny is one of the best FMCs you'll ever read. I loved her character so much, and Jonas Wolfe is the sexiest, suavest MMC ever. I think in this he's British, and I just love the British representation in it, and I just love him, and I just loved them as a couple together. And because it's a third book, there is like an overarching plot as well across all of them. Because it is the third book, I feel like I was starting to enjoy that. There's a lot of found family going on between all of the characters too, because they are all interconnected, but it's really, really, really good, and it's one of the best fake dating romances I've ever read. This masterpiece of a book. Again, another book that I feel like is a 6-star read. The Idea of You by Robin Lee. It's a reverse age gap, rockstar, forbidden love romance. And actually I don't even feel like you can call it a romance. I think it's more like women's literary fiction, because there isn't a happy ever after in this. So I know a lot of people do like to know. If you do decide to pick this up, just know that there is no happy ever after in it. But it was really emotional. It made me cry, but it is one of the best books, like contemporary books, I have ever read. And it basically follows Selene. She's like this at the time I think she's 38 or 39-year-old, really like classy, owns an art gallery woman, and it's important to have that depth to her character to understand like why this story is so impactful. She ends up falling for Hayes Campbell, who is like 22 years old, part of the biggest rock star boy band in the world, who like her daughter, Selene's daughter, is like one of their #1 fans, absolutely loves them, and it is essentially telling the story of them trying to be together despite what the world and everybody else thinks, and the effects it's having on Selene's family and her daughter and her previous marriage, because I think she's like going through divorce or got divorced, and it's so emotional and it's so good. If you have watched the film but not read the book is so much better. The film misses out so many things that are important. You need to read the book. It's just amazing, and it makes me emotional just thinking about it. It's just incredible. Basically, in 2022, I had a month where I just read straight up dark romance, and in that month, I read Hooked, Neon Gods, the entire Devil's Night series, the Cat and Mouse duet, Does It Hurt, and it's like the best reading month I've ever had in my life. And I always think back to October 2022. I read 14 books in that month. It just blew me away, and I honestly feel like my reading experience peaked. Actually, I recently just had a really good reading month, but I look back to that month and I feel like it peaked for me with dark romance. And Hooked is one of the books I read at that time, which is a dark Peter Pan retelling. It's the first book in the Never After series by Emily McIntyre, and it is really good. It's the perfect Peter Pan retelling. It's got mafia aspects to it, like it's on the darker side, like there's kidnapping and everything like that in it, but the spice was really good. The story was really good. It was fast paced, it was exciting. Never really got over it, and James Hook, to this day, is still one of my favourite MMCs ever. This is so fun. I do think this is the best book in the series. Well, I've only read the first 3 books. I still haven't read Twisted or Crossed yet, but Scarred and Wretched, like, they were good, but this just like blew those two out of the water. So for dark romance, if you're getting into it, I really recommend this, because it's not too dark, it's like teetering on the edge. And so if you want to like dip your toes in, this is the perfect book to start with. But oh my god, it's so good. I remember the whole entire book, like page 1 to the last page, vividly. Obviously, Magnolia Parks. The series as a whole, incredible, but these two books destroyed me, and my heart still hasn't been put back together, and I haven't been able to read Into the Dark because I'm scared to read it, because it's Magnolia and BJ's last book, and I don't know what I want, I don't know who I want her to be with, so please no spoilers in the comments. I don't know what I want from it, so I'm just not ready to read it yet. But Magnolia Parks The Long Way Home, and then Daisy Hates the Great Undoing. I mean, 6-star reads all day long. These are amazing. Like, Jessa's prose in this series is like nothing I have read, but it is the most thought-provoking, emotional, beautiful, poetic writing that I've read. Like, there isn't another author I have on my shelf that writes the way she does. It's extremely like lyrical and poetic, and I think because of that, it's the emotional impact that these books have on you is just amazing. Yes, there's a lot of miscommunication. Yes, it's super toxic, but I think if you can't get past the first book and really delve into who these characters are, what they've been through, the found family of it, if you can't get past book one, you're not gonna understand why people love it so much, and you are just gonna see toxic characters that are just really annoying to read about. But it really is so much more than that, and it's like, I will never, these characters just stick with me always, and I just think it's an incredible series, and I'm so glad that it's not done yet. We still get some more Daisy Hates books, because the day we get the last book in this world, I'm going to be absolutely inconsolable. So, The Loser's Duet by Harley LaRue, the first book, 5 stars all day long. This again is one of the better Why Choose romances that I've ever read, and it's one of the best. This book made me really realise that Why Choose can work if you take the time to provide enough layers and levels to the character relationship, enough depth, give us the flashbacks, provide us with the context as to why these characters are hurting, why they respond to each other this way. Like, Harley LaRue does exactly that in this book. So this basically follows Jessica, who's the popular girl at school. The 4 boys in it, she like was essentially their bully. It does all kick off in The Dare, so I would definitely recommend reading that novella first, which is such a good novella, by the way. She was essentially their bully, but when you read this book, you start getting these flashbacks of moments that she shared with them whilst they were all in high school, and you realise that there's just like so much more to the story than her not liking them. And it's like, she wants to be the popular girl and they are the misfits, but really she's happiest when she's with them. And it's just such a good book of like family acceptance, having the confidence to just be who you are, like not caring about what anybody thinks. And it's so much deeper than literally just like a spicy Why Choose. Is it one of the spiciest books I've ever read in my life? Yes. But there's just so much more to it, such a deeper meaning than that. And the character development in this book, well, it mainly comes in book 2, which I did like. It was just a little bit too long for me. I gave it like 4.5 stars, I think. But the character development in this is completely like unmatched. It is amazing. And then The Cat and Mouse Duet, of course, Mr. Zabe Meadows. How could I not? I remember feeling slightly underwhelmed halfway through book 1, thinking, what is the fuss about? It's not until I got to the end of the book that I looked back on the journey I'd had and I was like, whoa, this is amazing. This is another story where I'll never, ever, ever, ever get past Zaid and Addie. Ever. Like, I'll be 80 years old in my rocking chair thinking of these characters, but it's just, I can remember these books front to back. No problems. I remember the scenes, it's so vivid in my mind. Like, I even remember things that they specifically say to each other because these books were just so ingrained literally on my soul. I really think that the hype on this is real. Yes, it's very dark and there are really dark themes in it. I'll never get over it. Like, I think about it all the time, and I literally beg H.D. Carlton to write more books in this world. I know she kind of is, but I would love another book with Zaid and Addie. Not necessarily this storyline, but if she gave us more of them with a new storyline, I would literally, the day that news ever breaks, I'd have to probably just like be resuscitated or something, because I wouldn't even know how to react. It's what I've wanted ever since I've read these books 2 years ago. Right, we're into the home stretch. I just had to go and get my last books. So I mentioned the author of K.A. Moronova, and I just recently read, she wrote a dark fantasy romance series called called All Crows Academy. So of Deathless Shadows and Secrets of All Crows. So good. Picture Hogwarts. I'm stealing this quote actually from somebody else's Goodreads review, but I could not agree with it more. If Hogwarts was run by Voldemort and say like he won the war and stuff, and it was run by Voldemort and it was like really dark, but add shadow magic into it and all that stuff. That's what you get here, with a little bit of a Why Choose element sprinkled into it, but not really that much. This is so unique, it's so fun, I love the world, I think it's a really unique storyline, it's very dystopian feeling, so I feel like it's not just dark fantasy, it's like dark dystopian fantasy. I had so much fun with it. The characters themselves, there's only 1 or 2 characters that I'm really kind of obsessed with, and that's not the main FMC either, but one of the main MMCs, I was obsessed with him, but like, it's just the actual world that she's created and the story. It's so intriguing. I literally couldn't put it down, and I just love, oh my god. And I just love this author. This series is the only series that I'm about to talk about where I have rated every single book in this series 5 stars. That has not yet happened. Well, I mean, if you count the duology of Cam Mouse where I gave both of them 5 stars, and maybe, but in terms of a series, not a duology, Edge of Darkness trilogy by Lee Rivers. Firstly, if you think Haunting and Hunting Adeline is dark, you don't know anything yet. Like, wait till you read these books. These were very hard to read, very traumatic, very emotional, and super, super, super dark. And it's prevalent from books 1 through to 3. Like, there is no respite from how dark this story is. But I have never, this is, I think, the best explanation from what went on between 2 characters and their relationship in the past to present day, and giving us flashbacks that are literally so contextual to what is happening like at present day. So for example, the 2 characters are called Kate and Stacey, who have my complete heart and soul and every single part of me. This series literally altered my brain chemistry. But Kate and Stacey, they have had a thing since they were teenagers, and the stuff that they go through, it makes you wonder how on earth they are even still, I mean, how are they finding their way back to each other all the time? How are they forgiving each other for things? But you get so much depth, a bit like the Devil's Night series, where you go back and you find out, you watch the characters fall in love together, and then you come to present day, and then it gives you you understand the effects of why they feel this way. But nothing has ever hurt my heart more than even like going back to the past, reading about them and knowing what they're going through now, and like how much it was upsetting me. But it's like incredible, and the found family at the end of it as well, between them and all the side characters, which are amazing, like Tobias, Base, like the characters that get introduced into this series are so, so, so good and so important, and I'm just completely obsessed with this series. It has blown me away, and I will never get over it. Like, I literally said on my Bookstagram the other night when I finished it, I don't even know what to do or where to go. Like, I just feel lost. That is how much of an impact this story had on me. It was just insane. Okay, so there we have it. I feel like I have talked and talked and talked. I definitely need a cup of tea now. They are all the books I've ever rated 5 stars. Let me know what your favourite reads ever are, because these are literally my favourite books of all time. As always, let me know what other content you'd like to see. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos, and I'll see you guys in my next video.